This presentation is about mind and body exercise. So what I'm going to do first is define mind and body exercise with a short, condensed definition that contains two components. Then I'll further define the definition against conventional exercise, and I will also use yoga and Pilates as examples in order to gain a further understanding of mind and body exercise. The definition: mind and body exercise is a process-oriented physical activity with a low to moderate intensity level. As you can see, there are two components. It's process-oriented and it has a low to moderate intensity level. The first component, the process-oriented component, is based on the mindfulness of the participant during the process-oriented activity, the mind and body exercise. The second component is a component because, one, all mind and body exercises have a low to moderate intensity level, and two, the low to moderate intensity level is the preferred platform. Now, mind and body exercises' process-oriented approach can be further understood against conventional exercises' goal-oriented approach, which is where the participant takes cues from the instructor rather than from themselves, as they do in mind and body exercises. See, in conventional exercises, they are instructor-based, and mind and body exercises are participant-based. The participant listens to themselves, their bodies, more than the instructor. For example, in goal-oriented exercise, conventional exercise, like that of an aerobics class, the participant listens to the instructor, letting the instructor push them to the goal of, say, getting the heart rate up to 170 beats per minute for, say, 20 minutes straight. See, this is a goal. It's a goal to listen to the instructor to accomplish the goal of 170 beats per minute for 20 minutes. And, of course, all for the goal of, say, a lower blood pressure in 6 months. And, of course, after accomplishing the goal of doing this 3 times a week for the 6 months. As you can see, this is all goal-oriented. The means is to an end. In other words, in short, the means is to raise the heart rate to gain the end of a lower heart rate, the goal of a lower blood pressure in 6 months. But see, in process-oriented exercises, like that of yoga, the means is the end. The participant has a lower heart rate on the mat during the yoga routine, and they continue this lower heart rate off the mat. Of course, it may be the participant's goal to have a lower heart rate on the mat, or continue at a lower heart rate off the mat, and it may even be the goal of why the participant is doing yoga. But the goal of, say, a lower heart rate on or off the mat is not the sole focus of a yoga routine. Rather, the sole focus is the focus point that allows the mindfulness, and this mindfulness is what allows the participant to know their physical baseline, which is a baseline of knowing where they are and should not be physically. During the process-oriented activity, and this together is what essentially makes the activity a process-oriented activity, a mind and body exercise. So how does the focus point, the mindfulness, and the baseline work together? Well, in Pilates, for example, the breathing is a focus point that allows the participant to gain a mindfulness, which allows the participant to know their baseline of where they are and should not be physically. And in Pilates, to know this physical baseline is important because in Pilates, you have to know what you are doing right and what you are doing wrong so you can execute each movement precisely. See, in Pilates, it's not about no pain, no gain, or just do it or feel the burn. It's about precision and precision of the process. And when you know your physical baseline, then you can be precise based on your physical level of where you are physically. Now, in yoga, the breathing is also a focus point. And also in yoga, the breathing correlates to the body movements during the yoga routine or during a yoga pose, just like the breathing correlation of the movements in Pilates. See, in Pilates, the breathing also correlates to the movements, allowing the abdominal wall to contract properly, giving a flow and easiness of the Pilates movement. And this is the same in yoga. See, in general, in yoga, when you breathe in, the body is opening up. And when you breathe out, the body is closing up. And all the while, you're focusing on this in and out breath, the focus point, which is allowing you to be mindful of where you are and should not be physically, which is being mindful of your physical baseline. And depending on the yoga school or yoga instructor, you may have poses that correlate and counter each other using this focus point on the in and out breath, like that of the sun salutation. For example, in the sun salutation, you breathe in when you are opening up, like when you are in the upward dog, and when you need to breathe out, you breathe out when you are in the downward dog. And of course, you can hold these poses for several breaths or even longer. But no matter how long you hold these poses, or how static a held pose may seem, if you are breathing, the body is moving. May be very subtle, but it's still moving. So you still have a focus point, which allows for a mindfulness, which allows you to know your baseline of where you are and should not be physically. A good example to further illustrate how a static pose is not static is the seemingly static head-to-knee pose. See, in the head-to-knee pose, when you breathe in, you slightly come out of the pose because your belly swells with air, slightly pushing you out of the pose. And when you breathe out, the belly goes in, and you go back into the pose slightly. Now, this movement is very, very subtle, but when you are focusing on the breathing, the focus point, this subtle movement of your body is known, allowing you to be aware, mindful of this subtle movement that allows a mindfulness of the entire body. For example, when I breathe in, focusing on the in and out breath during the head-to-knee pose, I'm aware, mindful, that the right side of my lower back is tighter than the left side of my lower back. Or my right shoulder has an ache in it from an old injury that I wasn't even aware of before the yoga routine. And this even occurs in the seemingly static pose of the corpse pose, which can be considered the most static pose there is because you are just flat on your back. But it's not static at all because, again, if you are breathing, your body is still moving. In this case, it's called the belly, which is the body. So the body is moving. The belly is moving up and down, and this is the movement you are aware of when focusing on the focus point of the in and out breath. When you inhale and exhale, you are aware, mindful of the up and down of the belly, which allows you to be mindful of the tension or tightness in the left side of your lower back, or the ache in the right shoulder, or whatever it may be or not be. Now, once the participant is aware of their physical baseline, they do not go beyond their baseline physically, and mentally they do not judge themselves of where they think they should be physically, nor compete against where they think they should be physically. For example, in regards to not judging oneself in yoga, if they can't do the shoulder stand, then they stay in the plow or put their legs up against a wall or on a chair, or they just stay in the corpse. And it's okay because it's where they are. And they learn to accept this, not judging where they think they should be. And they do not compete against themselves physically in the yoga routine by trying to go where they think they should be. Again, if they can't do the shoulder stand, they just modify it or they just don't do it. And it's okay because it's where they are and they accept this. So overall, they just accept where they are physically during the yoga routine, which is extremely important because it allows them to accept where and who they are off the mat, the yoga mat, which we'll see links to self-efficacy. Now, before I continue to the second component, the low to moderate intensity level, I want to bring everything together with a quick summary of the first component, the process-oriented component. And I also want to bring in the second component now so we can see how it fits in within the big picture of mind and body exercise. As you see at the top of the chart, we have the mind and body exercise, the process-oriented exercise, the process-oriented component, which is a low to moderate intensity level. See, this process-oriented exercise, as I explained, uses a focus point, which allows a mindfulness, which allows a baseline. This is why all the arrows point straight down, connecting all three of these boxes. Now, the baseline, with a little imagination, now holds the focus point box and the mindfulness box. Together, the baseline box can now allow the benefits of mental development and self-efficacy. And of course, all with the assistance of the low to moderate intensity level throughout the entire body, mind and body exercise. Now, for these specific benefits, as you see, an arrow is going to the right from the baseline box to the mental development box because the participant's mindfulness is mindful of their physical baseline, which assists mental development. And also, as you see, there is an arrow going to the left from the baseline box, splitting off to the non-judgmental box and the non-competitive box because knowing one's physical baseline is what one is not judgmental of nor competitive against. They are just accepting where they are physically based on their baseline. So as a result, from these boxes, an arrow goes back to the right to the self-efficacy box because accepting oneself by not judging oneself nor competing against oneself during the mind and body exercise is taken outside of the mind and body exercise, which assists self-efficacy. Now, to the low to moderate intensity level as a component rather than a high intensity level, this is because of two reasons. One, all mind and body exercises have a low to moderate intensity level. And two, a low to moderate intensity level is the preferred platform for mental development and self-efficacy. For the first reason, all mind and body exercises have a low to moderate intensity level. This is based against why and how a high intensity level cannot be a component of mind and body exercise. And the reason is because a high intensity level does not correlate to some of the components of mind and body exercises, leaving out specific components, making the mind and body exercise no longer a mind and body exercise. For example, you can't have a high intensity level of 170 beats per minute for 20 minutes without having some level of a competitive state of mind, which is not a mindful mind and body exercise component. And this competitive state of mind is also what allows one to have the instructor push them through their goal of maintaining 170 beats per minute for 20 minutes. As you can see, this is instructor-based, which is not part of a mind and body exercise. And it's goal-oriented, which is not part of a mind and body exercise. So in short, a high intensity level cannot be part of a mind and body exercise because specific components have to be removed or not included, making the exercise not a mind and body exercise. And also in regards to this first reason, an exercise like Pilates may pop to mind, which seems to have a high intensity level. But if you remember, in Pilates, if the participant is not going past their physical baseline and their breathing is correlating with the Pilates movement, which is allowing a flow and easiness of the Pilates movement, then Pilates is still a low to moderate intensity level activity. And maybe a seemingly high intensity level of yoga pops to mind. But still, just like that of Pilates, if the participant is not going past their physical baseline and their breathing is correlating within the yoga pose or correlating to the yoga poses during the yoga routine, allowing a flow and easiness, then this seemingly high intensity yoga is still a low to moderate intensity level activity. Now, of course, some exercises have the name yoga or Pilates in them, which are taught as high intensity level activities. And of course, some teachers teach yoga and Pilates at high intensity levels. But just because a name has yoga or Pilates in it does not make it a mind and body exercise. And just because some instructors teach Pilates and yoga at a high intensity level does not make their yoga or Pilates a mind and body exercise. As I just explained, all the components of mind and body exercises that correlate must correlate, not leaving one component out, which would make it not a mind and body exercise. And a high intensity level does just that. It does not correlate with some of the components and it leaves specific components out. So again, a high intensity level cannot be a component of a mind and body exercise. Now, to the second reason, a low to moderate intensity level is the preferred platform for the benefits of mental development and self-efficacy. Now, of course, I'm not saying high intensity conventional exercises do not allow for these benefits. They do, but I am saying it's not the preferred platform. See, it's sort of like saying Pilates is the preferred platform for gaining max muscle strength because Pilates builds muscle strength, and it does. But we all know resistance training, specifically weight training, lifting heavy weight with low reps to complete muscle failure of each single set is a better method to gain max muscle strength. So just like weightlifting is the preferred platform for max muscle strength, mind and body exercise is the preferred platform for mental development and self-efficacy. So specifically, how are these mind and body exercise benefits obtained? Well, in short, specific to mental development, this benefit is attained by a low to moderate intensity level because it's easier to be mindful of things that are moving slowly, easily, fluently, and with less effort. So when this mindfulness is on or of these slow, easy, fluent, less effort types of movements, then one is assisting mental development. It's really almost that simple. But of course, the other components like just training the mind to stay focused on the focus point plays a part. And of course, the consistency of, say, doing a mind and body exercise 3 times a week plays its part, as well as all the components playing their part individually. But the point is, no matter how much we break down to the specific reasons, the specific components, mental development is a mind and body exercises benefit because of how its low to moderate intensity level links and allows all the mind and body exercise components, not leaving one component out, keeping it a mind and body exercise. Now, for self-efficacy, this benefit is attained by not having a judgmental state of mind, nor having a competitive state of mind against where the participant thinks they should be physically during the mind and body exercise, which is based on them knowing their physical baseline. As I explained, they just accept themselves of where they are physically during the mind and body exercise, which allows them to accept themselves outside of the mind and body exercise as well. In other words, just as they do not judge nor compete against where they think they should be during the mind and body exercise, they will learn not to judge nor compete against where or who they think they should be in their everyday life, with their everyday situations. which allows for self-efficacy. Now, to sum up everything to conclusion, again, at the top of the chart, we have the mind and body exercise, which is a low to moderate intensity level. This type of exercise uses a focus point, which allows a mindfulness, which allows a physical baseline. From the baseline, which contains the focus point box and the mindfulness box, has an arrow that goes to the mental development box, because together, one's focus point allows the mindfulness that allows one to know their physical baseline, which assists mental development. And also, there's an arrow going from the baseline box that splits off to the non-judgmental box and the non-competitive box, because knowing one's physical baseline allows one not to judge nor compete where one thinks they should be. Rather, they are just accepting where they are physically based on their physical baseline. So as a result, now an arrow goes from these two boxes to the self-efficacy box, because accepting oneself by not judging oneself nor competing against oneself during the mind and body exercise is taken outside of the mind and body exercise, which assists self-efficacy in one's everyday life. So with a long one-sentence conclusion, mind and body exercise is a non-judgmental, non-competitive, low to moderate intensity level, process-oriented activity that has a focus point that allows a mindfulness of the physical baseline, which assists mental development and self-efficacy.